I'm Nora Lee, and I'm going to tell you about the Thanksgiving that changed everything for me. It's a story I never thought I'd share, but here I am because maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Thanksgiving had always been a big deal in my family. Turkey pumpkin pie and loud laughter echoing through the house. It was the one day I felt truly connected to them, despite all the differences that lay beneath the surface. But last year, I found out just how thin those connections really were. I work as an HVAC technician, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Not exactly the kind of job that impresses people at dinner parties. But it's honest work, and I've built a good life for myself, one I'm proud of. Even if my family never quite understood that. My younger sister Isla is the golden child. She's finishing her law degree at a fancy private university, always dressed like she stepped out of a fashion magazine. I've always been proud of her, even if our lives couldn't be more different. And I've never begrudged her the fact that our parents seem to revolve around her like planets caught in her orbit. You see, I've been the one quietly paying for Isla's tuition. Every semester. I never told anyone, certainly not Isla's boyfriend or his wealthy parents. It didn't matter to me that I wasn't getting any recognition. I just wanted her to have the life she dreamed of, even if it meant taking extra shifts, missing vacations, and scraping by on instant ramen more times than I'd like to admit. A week before Thanksgiving, I was finishing up a job at a local community center when my phone buzzed. Mom's name lit up the screen. I smiled already, picturing her asking me to bring my famous pecan pie, maybe teasing me about how I always went overboard with the whipped cream. But as soon as I answered, her voice was different, tight, rehearsed. "Nora, honey," she began, and I knew immediately that this wasn't a casual call. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping outside into the cool November air. The sky was bruised with low clouds, and I could feel the first bite of winter in the wind. Mom hesitated. "We've been talking, your father and I, about Thanksgiving." My heart sank. "Yeah, what about it?" "Well, Isla's boyfriend is bringing his parents this year. They're very particular, Nora. Old money, and Isla wants everything to be just right." I gripped my phone tighter. "Okay. So what does that have to do with me?" She let out a breath. "We think it might be best if you sat this one out." For a moment, I didn't understand. The words didn't make sense. "What?" My voice cracked. "What do you mean, sit it out? It's not about you." She rushed to say, her voice sticky sweet like honey that had gone sour. "It's about making a good impression. Isla's future is at stake here, Nora." I could feel my face flushing hot, my fingers going numb. "So I'm not good enough to be part of the family dinner. Is that what you're saying?" "Of course not," she said quickly. "Your family, Nora." "But these people, they're different. You know how it is. We don't want Isla to feel uncomfortable." I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat. "I see. So it's not about me. It's about Isla's embarrassment." There was a pause long enough for me to hear the truth in the silence. "It's just one dinner," Mom said softly, like that made it any easier. "We'll make it up to you. We'll have a brunch next week, just us." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I hung up instead, staring out at the gray sky, until my phone went dark in my hand. When I finally got home that night, I sat at my kitchen table in the dim glow of a single overhead bulb. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with secondhand furniture and 1,000 little reminders of who I was. A woman who worked with her hands, who fixed broken things. But no matter how many systems I could repair, I couldn't fix this. A text came through from my cousin Riley. She'd always been the one who told me the truth, even when it hurt. "Nora," it read, "I overheard Isla and your mom talking. Isla didn't want you there. She said she didn't want them to think we come from a working-class family." I read it twice, the words pounding in my chest like a hammer. I had paid for her textbooks, her rent, her endless coffee runs during finals week. I'd worked until my hands ached and my back screamed all so she could sit in those pristine lecture halls without a care in the world. And she was ashamed of me. I wanted to believe there had been a mistake, some misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. Isla had been slowly erasing me from her life for years. Never introducing me to her friends. Never inviting me to her campus events. Making excuses for why I wasn't around, as if I were some embarrassing secret. And I'd let her. Because family is supposed to mean something. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke up alone. No frantic kitchen dance to get the turkey in the oven, no music playing in the background, while I tried not to burn the rolls. Just me and a bitter cup of coffee. I tried to distract myself taking a long walk down to the harbor, where the gulls wheeled overhead squawking like they were mocking me. But no matter how far I walked, I couldn't outrun the ache in my chest. That evening, I made the mistake of checking social media. There they were, my family, smiling in their carefully coordinated outfits, the table set with crystal and fine china. Isla in a dress I had bought for her birthday, beaming at her boyfriend's parents, like she had everything she ever wanted. I wasn't even a ghost in those pictures. I didn't exist. As I sat there, my phone still in my hand, I felt something shift inside me. A slow, quiet fury. If my presence wasn't good enough for their table, then my money wasn't good enough for Isla's tuition. For the first time in my life, I stopped and asked myself, what if I stopped being the one who held everything together? And in that question, I found the spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. The morning after Thanksgiving, I woke up with a clear mind for the first time in years. No obligations pulling me in 1,000 directions. No weight of expectations pressing me down. Just silence, and the sound of my own heartbeat steady and strong. I sat at my kitchen table, the early light streaming through the window, turning the cracked linoleum floor into something almost beautiful. My coffee steamed in the mug, but I didn't touch it. My laptop sat in front of me, the screen dark, waiting. For years, I had logged in every month without a second thought, making sure Isla's tuition was covered, that her future was secured. But today, I wasn't going to do it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the password burned into my memory. The university's payment portal was as familiar to me as the back of my own hand. I typed it in each click of the keys, a final drumbeat of what had been. Balance due $23,800. I let out a breath. That number had always been a reminder of how much I was willing to sacrifice. How many hours I'd spent climbing through crawl spaces, fixing other people's broken furnaces, to make sure Isla never felt the cold bite of unpaid bills. But today, that number was a line in the sand, and I was done crossing it. The cursor blinked at me, waiting for the next move. I clicked on Remove Payment Method. A small pop-up appeared on the screen. Are you sure this action cannot be undone? I clicked yes. It was so simple. One click and I was free. The moment my finger left the trackpad, my phone started to buzz on the table. My mother's name. My gut clenched, but I ignored it. She called again. Then again. By the fourth call, I sighed and picked up. Nora. Her voice was tight, strained. What did you do? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Good morning to you too, Mom. Don't play games with me, she snapped. Isla just called hysterical, saying you stopped paying her tuition. Tell me it's not true. Oh, it's true, I said, my voice calm and flat. There was a pause, sharp, heavy. Nora, how could you be so cruel? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Cruel? You mean like uninviting your own daughter to Thanksgiving because she doesn't fit into your perfect little image, like that mom? She was just trying to make a good impression. Nora, she said, her voice slipping into that syrupy, manipulative sweetness she always used when she wanted something from me. You know how these things work. She's 24. Mom, she knows exactly how these things work. Another pause, and then the inevitable line. You promised Nora. You promised you'd support her through school. No, I corrected, my knuckles white around my coffee mug. I promised to help my sister. But she stopped being a sister the moment she decided I wasn't good enough to be seen with her. She didn't mean it that way, Mom said softly, like she was soothing a child. She meant it exactly that way. I said the words steady and hard. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Mom let out a frustrated sigh. You're overreacting. Family makes sacrifices for each other. That's what we do. I almost laughed. Funny how that only seems to apply when I'm the one making the sacrifices. Nora, she needs this, she said, her tone sharp, urgent. I stood up from the table, pacing the small kitchen as I spoke. So did I, Mom. I needed a family that didn't treat me like an embarrassment. I needed a sister who didn't hide me like some dirty secret. But I guess that wasn't as important as Isla's fancy dinner party, huh? She was silent, and for the first time, I felt the power in that silence. She had no script for this, no soft-edged excuses to offer. I'm done, I said, my voice steady and sure. I've spent years paying for her dreams, while she pretended I didn't exist. And I'm not doing it anymore. Nora, I mean it. I cut her off, my hands trembling with adrenaline. Find someone else to foot the bill, like who, she snapped. Your father and I can't afford it, and you know it. And there it was, the truth they'd never said out loud. They never expected Isla to stand on her own 2 feet. They expected me to keep bending over backward, to keep giving until there was nothing left. Well, maybe Isla's going to have to learn what the rest of us already know, I said, reaching for the end call button. Life doesn't hand you everything just because you're pretty and polite. I hung up before she could reply. The hours after that were quiet, too quiet. I kept expecting the phone to ring again, for someone else to swoop in and fix it all, to smooth over the cracks. But no one did. And in that silence, I felt something dangerous and exhilarating: freedom. But it didn't last. By the afternoon, the calls started coming. Dad, Nora, this is going too far. You're punishing your own blood. My Aunt Delilah. I never thought you'd be so heartless. My cousin Ethan. It's just money, Nora. Don't be petty. Every message said the same thing: I was wrong. I was cruel. I was the villain in a story they'd all decided to write without me. Not one of them had stood up for me when I was uninvited from Thanksgiving. Not one had called to ask how I felt. But now that Isla's comfortable little life was on the line, they were all coming out of the woodwork. I let the messages pile up unanswered. I sat in the quiet of my apartment, the air thick with unspoken words, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And it felt good. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Isla wouldn't let go that easily. She had always been able to talk her way out of trouble, to twist the truth, until everyone else saw her as the victim. And she was about to find out that I wasn't playing along anymore. I thought cutting off Isla would be the end of it. I thought she'd finally understand that I wasn't her safety net anymore, that I wasn't going to keep cleaning up her messes. But I should have known better. The next morning, I was halfway through a job in the freezing crawl space of an old house when my phone started buzzing in my pocket over and over. I ignored it, focused on the hiss of the old furnace and the metallic clink of my wrench. But when I crawled out and checked my phone, I saw her name, Isla Lee, in bold letters. Voicemails, texts, all of them in that frantic, panicked tone she saved for when she wanted something. Nora, you can't do this. I need this semester. Please call me back. This isn't fair. I'll be kicked out if I can't pay. Please, don't ruin everything for me. I closed my eyes, the cold air biting at my skin. My heart squeezed in my chest, but I forced it back down. I wasn't going to be swayed by her desperation, not this time. I didn't reply. When she realized I wasn't answering, she turned to someone else. That evening, I got a call from Dorian, Isla's boyfriend. I'd never met him in person. Isla had always managed to keep our worlds separate, but I knew who he was. The perfect catch, expensive watch, polished manners, and a family name that opened doors Isla had been clawing to get through. Hello, I answered, my voice guarded. Hi, Nora, he said, his tone cautious. I'm Dorian. I know we've never really talked, but I wanted to ask you about Isla's tuition. I let out a slow breath. What about it? I'm just trying to understand what's going on, he said carefully. Isla's upset. She said you cut her off, that she doesn't know how she's going to stay in school. I leaned against the wall of my small office, feeling the weight of his words. That's true, I said simply. He paused. Can I ask why I hesitated? Part of me wanted to unload everything, to tell him about the years of sacrifice, about how she had erased me from her life whenever it suited her. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference to him. He wasn't calling because he cared about me. He was calling because he cared about Isla. She didn't tell you, I asked, my voice cold. She said she didn't want to burden me with family drama, he admitted. I let out a bitter laugh. Family drama, I repeated. Isn't that convenient? There was a pause. Nora, I get that you're upset. But Isla, she's trying so hard. She's worked so hard for this. I know, I said, my tone softening just for a moment. I've been the one making sure she didn't have to work so hard. But that's over now. Another long pause. Okay, he said finally. I understand. Thanks for talking to me. When I hung up, I felt the first crack in my resolve. It was easy to be strong when it was just me and Isla, but when someone else stepped in, when someone else started asking questions, I felt the old guilt creeping in. The same guilt that had kept me quiet for years. I pushed it down. But Isla wasn't done. The next day, she posted on social media vague, carefully worded posts that didn't mention my name, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Some people care more about money than family. It's heartbreaking. You think you know someone until they turn their back on you. The comments flooded in. Friends, family, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. All of them rallying around her. You don't deserve this, Isla. You're amazing. I can't believe your own family would do this to you. I scrolled through the comments, my jaw tight. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know how many nights I'd spent working overtime to cover her tuition. They didn't know how many birthdays and holidays I'd missed because I was too busy trying to make sure she never felt the weight of those bills. They only knew her version of the story. That night, I got a message from Aunt Marie. I saw what Isla posted. How could you do this to her, Nora? She's your sister. Family means everything. Family means everything. Those words rattled around in my head like loose change. Family meant everything, until it didn't. Until they decided I wasn't good enough. I didn't reply to her. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I went back to my work. My hands were steady as I fixed the busted water heater in the old apartment building on the edge of town. My focus was clear, my breathing calm. Because here, in the quiet hum of the boiler and the faint smell of oil, I felt like myself. But I knew it wasn't over. I could feel it in my bones. Isla wasn't going to let this go. She had spent her whole life building up this image, this perfect story she wanted everyone to believe. And I had ruined it. And Isla. She was always at her most dangerous when she felt cornered. The next day, she showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a staff meeting when the front door banged open. Conversations fell silent as Isla stormed in her face, flushed her eyes bright with fury. You ruined my life, she spat, her voice trembling. I set down my clipboard and leaned back in my chair. Isla, this isn't the time or the place. I don't care, she snapped, her voice rising. You think you can just cut me off like I'm nothing. You think you can just erase me. I felt the weight of every eye in the room, my employees frozen, watching the scene unfold. But I didn't flinch. I didn't erase you, I said evenly. I stopped letting you erase me. Her mouth opened and closed, like she was searching for words that wouldn't come. She looked around the room, desperate for someone to back her up to see her side. But no one moved. I'm your sister, she said finally, her voice breaking. I'm your family. I stood slowly, my voice low and calm. Family doesn't treat each other like this, Isla. Family doesn't hide you away because they're embarrassed. Family doesn't use you and then throw you away when it's convenient. For a moment, the room was so quiet, I could hear the distant sound of traffic outside, the faint whistle of the winter wind through the gaps in the old windows. Isla's face crumpled. You're going to regret this, Nora, she whispered. I looked her in the eye, my own voice steady and sure. No, Isla, I won't. And in that moment, I knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. After Isla's dramatic showdown at my office, everything seemed to shift. Word traveled fast in our small town, faster than I'd expected. I could feel the weight of every whisper, every curious glance, as I walked through the grocery store or filled up at the gas station. It was as if the entire community had decided they knew who the villain was, and it wasn't Isla. The first time it really hit me was at the hardware store. I was there to grab a new set of wrenches, but as I was browsing the aisle, I ran into Mrs. Carter, one of my oldest clients. She gave me a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her eyes. I never thought I'd see the day when a sister turns her back on family, she said, her voice clipped and cold. I swallowed hard, the words like ice down my spine. Mrs. Carter, you don't know the full story. She just shook her head. Family is family, Nora. Some things you don't just walk away from. I didn't argue. There was no point. Instead, I paid for my tools and walked out feeling that old familiar ache in my chest, the ache that came from always having to justify my existence. But there was one thing I was sure of: now I wasn't going to let Isla's version of the story be the only one. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. My hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure of how to begin. But then, I thought about all the people who had seen me as nothing more than a bank account, a convenience. And I thought about all the nights I'd spent working overtime to make sure Isla never had to worry about a thing. And I started typing. For years I paid for my sister's education. I covered every bill, every expense, while she pretended I didn't exist. She told me I wasn't good enough to be at the table with her boyfriend's parents. So I stopped paying for her life. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate. My phone lit up with messages, some of them supportive, some of them vicious. But for the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't hiding anymore. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Riley, my cousin. Saw your post. About time you said something, Nora. Proud of you. That small message meant more than I could say. It reminded me that not everyone believed Isla's story. But Isla wasn't about to let my words go unanswered. Later that day, she called. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear her rehearsed apologies or her manipulative half-truths. Then she showed up at my apartment. She was standing outside my door when I got home from work, her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, her arms crossed over her chest. Nora, she said, her voice low. We need to talk. I pushed past her into my apartment, not bothering to invite her in. I don't think we have anything to talk about. She followed me anyway, closing the door behind her. You're making me look bad, she said, her voice trembling. You're ruining everything I've worked for. I turned to face her. Everything you've worked for, Isla, I'm the one who paid for it. You didn't even bother to show up for me at Thanksgiving. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I was trying to protect my future, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't want them to see where I came from. And what about where you come from, Isla? You come from me, from this life, from the sacrifices I made so you could have that future you're so desperate to protect. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't let them sway me. You think you're the only one who's been hurt? I asked quietly. You think I haven't spent years feeling like I was never enough for you? She shook her head. I'm sorry, Nora. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I let out a hollow laugh. You never do, Isla. That's the problem. There was a long silence between us, the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. Finally, she spoke. So what now? Are you just going to leave me with nothing? I met her gaze, my voice steady. I'm not leaving you with nothing. I'm just done carrying you. It's time for you to figure out how to stand on your own. She swallowed hard, her shoulders slumping. I don't know how she whispered. That's not my problem anymore, I said. And with those words, I felt a door close inside me, a finality I hadn't known I was capable of. She left without another word. But the fallout didn't stop there. The next week, I noticed a change in the way people looked at me. Some of them, like Mrs. Carter, barely spoke to me at all. Others, like Riley and a few of my closest friends, offered small gestures of support. A warm smile, a quick hug that said, I see you. I'm here. And then there was Dorian. He showed up at my shop one afternoon, his expression a mix of confusion and something else, something like guilt. Can we talk? He asked, his voice quiet. I nodded, leading him to the small office in the back. He sat down across from me, his eyes searching mine. I didn't know, he said finally. Isla never told me it was you paying for everything. I leaned back in my chair. She didn't want you to know. She wanted you to think she came from a perfect family. But that's not the truth. He ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. She lied to me, he said almost to himself, about everything. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. I'm sorry, he said, finally meeting my gaze, for believing her without asking you first. I shrugged. It's not your apology to make, Dorian, it's hers. He nodded, standing. If you ever need anything, I mean it. I watched him leave, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy. He was just another piece in Isla's carefully constructed puzzle, and now that puzzle was falling apart. And maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. The days that followed felt like a slow-motion avalanche. Every day, a new crack in the facade, a new piece of the world Isla had built on borrowed strength coming apart. I watched it all happen from the sidelines, my resolve hardening like steel with every new revelation. At first, it was just small things. A canceled dinner party with Dorian's parents. A polite but distant text from one of Isla's sorority sisters who had always loved to brag about their perfectly curated lives. Then the real blow, the university's final notice. I didn't hear it from Isla. I heard it from Genevieve. We were having coffee at the small cafe near my shop, a place where no one knew the whole story. She sat across from me, her brow furrowed. "Did you hear?" she asked, her voice low. "Hear what she's been dropped from her classes," Genevieve said. The payment didn't go through, and she missed the final deadline. "They're saying she can re-enroll if she pays up, but, well, you know how that goes." I let the words sink in, feeling a sharp, almost guilty twist in my stomach. Almost. But I pushed it aside. Isla had made her choices. "She's been telling everyone she's taking a mental health break from school," Genevieve continued. "But people are starting to put the pieces together." I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. "It's her mess to clean up now." Genevieve nodded. "Yeah, it is. I hope you're okay, Nora. I know this can't be easy." I managed a small smile. "It's not. But it's also, I don't know, it's freeing. For the first time, I feel like I'm not living someone else's life." Genevieve reached across the table, giving my hand a quick squeeze. "Good. You deserve that." When I got home that night, I found a note slipped under my door. Isla's handwriting. Neat, precise, almost desperate. "I don't know what to do anymore. Please, Nora. You've always known how to fix things. I need you to fix this for me." I sat on the edge of my bed, the note resting in my lap. For a moment, the memories of all those nights I'd bailed her out flashed through my mind. The time she'd been short on rent and too proud to tell anyone else. The late-night phone calls when she'd run out of grocery money and didn't want mom and dad to know. All those times I'd been the one to fix it. But not this time. I tore the note in half, letting the pieces fall to the floor. The next morning, I got a call from Dorian. His voice was different this time, quiet, resolute. "I ended it," he said simply. "I couldn't keep pretending I didn't see who she really was." I didn't say anything at first. What could I say? That I was sorry? That it wasn't his fault? He wasn't looking for sympathy, he was just telling me the truth. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment, his voice soft, "for how I treated you when Isla was telling her side of the story. I should have asked you first." "It's okay," I said quietly. "You didn't owe me anything." "Still," he said, "I wanted you to know. And I hope you're okay." "I am," I said, and for the first time I meant it. When I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. A weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying finally lifted. Dorian had seen the truth, and he wasn't the only one. That afternoon, I stopped by one of my regular clients' homes, Mr. and Mrs. Patel, an older couple who'd been using my HVAC services for years. Mrs. Patel opened the door with a warm smile. "Nora," she said, ushering me inside. "We heard about everything. How are you holding up?" I blinked in surprise. "I'm okay. Thank you." She nodded, her eyes kind. "We always knew you were the one holding things together. It's good to see you standing up for yourself." Her words felt like a balm, a small piece of validation that I hadn't even known I needed. "Thank you," I said again, and I meant it. But Isla wasn't done. That evening, as I was closing up shop, I heard the door to my office slam open. Isla stood there, her hair a mess, her eyes wild. "You think you're so much better than me?" She spat, her voice shaking. "You think you're some kind of hero because you stopped paying for me. Well, guess what, Nora? I'm not the only one who's going to lose because of you." I stared at her, my jaw tight. "What are you talking about?" She took a step closer, her voice low and venomous. "You think people don't talk. You think your little post didn't make everyone see you differently. Clients, friends, they're all wondering if they can trust you, if you'd turn your back on them too. For a split second, her words cut deep. But then I saw the desperation in her eyes, the way she was grasping at anything to hurt me, because she had nothing else left. I'm not ashamed of what I did, I said calmly. I'm done being your safety net. And if that makes people see me differently, that's on them. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, I said. But at least I'll regret it for myself, not because someone else told me to. She stared at me, her lips parted like she wanted to say something else. But no words came. Then she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the quiet, the echo of her footsteps fading down the street. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling. But underneath the fear, there was something else, something stronger. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about Isla anymore. This was about me, about reclaiming the life I'd almost given away, piece by piece, to people who only saw me as what I could do for them. And I wasn't going to give it away anymore. That night, I made a choice. I sat down at my kitchen table, pulled out a fresh notebook, and started writing down everything I wanted for myself. My dreams, my plans, my hopes that I'd buried under everyone else's needs for so long. It was messy, the words pouring out in a jumble of half-formed thoughts and scribbled lines. But it was real. It was mine. And as I wrote, I realized something important. I wasn't alone. There were people like Genevieve, like Mrs. Patel, who saw me, who believed in me, and that was enough. Because in the end, the only person I needed to believe in me was me. The days after Isla's final outburst were strangely quiet. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone else's permission to take the next step. I spent my mornings at the shop focused on the work that had always been mine and mine alone. There was comfort in it, the steady hum of the old HVAC systems, the smell of copper and dust, the satisfaction of fixing something with my own two hands. My clients still called their trust in me, unwavering, despite Isla's whispered poison. Maybe they'd seen through the drama all along. Or maybe they just knew me better than she ever could. In the evenings, I poured that same energy into building something new, something for me. I took the expansion plans I'd been sketching for months and finally turned them into action. My small team of 3 employees became 5. The cramped office space became a bigger, brighter workshop, complete with a new sign out front that read, Nora Lee and Crew, Heating and Cooling Done Right. My name, my work, my future. On the Saturday before Christmas, Genevieve stopped by the new shop. She leaned against the counter, her eyes taking in the freshly painted walls and the gleaming new workbenches. You did it, she said, her voice quiet but proud. I smiled. Yeah? I did. She pushed a small box across the counter, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. A little something for you, she said, for everything you've done for everyone else, and for finally doing something for yourself. Inside was a brass keychain engraved with 3 simple words, Stand your ground. I ran my thumb over the words, feeling them sink into my skin. Thank you, Jen, I said softly. I needed this. She hugged me, then a quick, fierce squeeze that reminded me that family wasn't always about blood. It was about the people who stood by you, even when it wasn't convenient. That night, I walked home through the quiet streets, the cold air nipping at my cheeks, Christmas lights twinkling in every window. I thought about how far I'd come from the girl who had spent every holiday trying to prove she was worthy of love, to the woman who had learned she didn't have to prove anything to anyone. And then, just as I was unlocking my door, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. The first in weeks. Merry Christmas, Nora. We miss you. Can we talk? I stared at the message, my breath clouding in the cold night air. For a long time, I didn't move. Part of me wanted to answer to bridge the gap that had grown between us. But another part of me, a stronger part, knew that some bridges weren't meant to be crossed again. I deleted the message without replying. Inside, I poured myself a cup of tea and settled onto the couch, the soft glow of the Christmas tree washing the room in gold. I thought about everything that had happened, how it had hurt, how it had forced me to grow. And I thought about how grateful I was, even for the pain. Because without it, I would never have found the strength to choose myself. A week later, on New Year's Eve, I got another text. This one from Isla. I'm sorry, it said. I know you won't believe me, but I am. I stared at it, my heart beating slow and heavy in my chest. The girl I'd grown up with. The sister I'd loved so fiercely, even when she didn't love me back. And for a moment, I almost gave in. Almost. But then I thought about everything she'd taken. The years I'd spent erasing myself so she could shine brighter. The nights I'd spent working while she lived a life that was never really hers. I set my phone down and walked to the window, watching the fireworks begin to burst in the sky over the city. They were loud and bright and messy like me, like the life I'd finally chosen. And I knew that no matter what Isla said, no matter how many times she tried to rewrite the story, I wasn't going back. I was done being the footnote in someone else's life. This was my story now, my future. As I watched the fireworks crackle and dance in the sky, I whispered to myself, I'm free. Because I was. Finally, truly free. And if you're out there watching this story, if you've ever been where I was, know this, you're allowed to choose yourself. You're allowed to stop giving to people who only want to take. You're allowed to stand your ground. You're not selfish for wanting to be seen. You're not cruel for wanting respect. You're not wrong for wanting to breathe in your own life without someone else's weight on your shoulders. So tonight, I'm asking you, what would you do if you stopped letting other people's expectations define you? What would you build if you finally believed you deserved to stand in your own light? Drop a comment below. Tell me if you've ever had to make a choice like this, if you've ever had to put yourself first, even when it hurt. I want to hear your story because I know it's worth telling. And if this story spoke to you, if it gave you a spark of courage or a moment of recognition, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because there's more where this came from, and you deserve to be part of it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And remember, choosing yourself is never the wrong choice.